All right, so the person in front of you, zero introduction needed. I mean, it's the great legendary Michael Pierce. I've had him on before, and last time I had him on, we talked about his book Motes and Beams, and everyone should have this memorized and highlighted like I do. But if you don't have it, please get it.
Memorized.
I mean, I reference it all the time. But one thing is, so I bring up this book because your boy wrote a book, Marvel and Sculptor. It's nothing. It's not even on the same tier as Mr.
Wow.
Pierce, but I was inspired. I write about. There's a lot of creators I read about. Some of them I just list as like these are my favorite, and then I write like a thing about certain ones. You got a paragraph from me. It's funny.
Yay. Oh my gosh.
I think recently we had some weird NI synchronicity because I randomly posted it'd be interesting yet hard to do is write the 16 types represented by a song, and then I posted on my community channel, and then you commented and you're like, I literally just posted this 20 minutes. What's that about?
It was honestly, when I first saw it, I was like, did I accidentally post the video already? Because I had uploaded it, but to be private because I needed to do some stuff and I can't do that on my phone. And then I just happened to be scrolling through Facebook and saw you had posted.
Yeah.
And I just like I'm not joking when I say it was like this was my video was made privately uploaded 56 minutes ago. And then I looked at yours and it was like 56 or 57 minutes ago. Like it was really, really weird. So when you listed a bunch of songs that you associated with the type. So I don't know what that's about.
Well, and I'm going to add a layer to this, and I'm not going to say who it is, but somebody else also texted me from the community and said, I just finished filming a video on this. That's so crazy. Not an NI dominant type. So it's still out there, must be a like collective unconscious type deal.
That's certainly how Jung would describe it. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I only got the idea to do that like a week ago or something. I had, but anyway.
Yeah. And it's hard and obviously super subjective because it's limited to like my knowledge. Like my Spotify account is all I can do on that.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to talk to you about, and I have referenced it every time I talk about this temperament. And you have when you talk about the 16 types, you have them into temperaments, much like Kiersey, you have 4 different temperaments, but you have the monarchic types, the democratic types, the theocratic types, and the anarchic types. And because I'm selfish, I really want to know. I want you to talk about the monarchic types and why do you call them that? And just can you go over those for the audience, like which ones are the monarch types?
Yes, so it would be the NTJs, so the INTJ and ENTJ, and the SFPs, so the ESFP and ISFP. So those are the quote monarchic types. The reason I use that, and there's a small bit of it which is meant to be kind of like an inside joke or a bit of humor there, but the main reason, it's also kind of unfortunate because I didn't mean for it to be taken super seriously, but it does have a serious well there's a bit of an element of there's a very, very tiny element of me sort of poking fun at everybody because I also have the theocrats and the anarchists and the Democrats, but there was a serious reason for me choosing that. So it's to show this relation with the other in socionics, the quadras, but also the sort of temperaments as I refer to them in the book. I chose monarch because I was trying to designate in a quick way it's almost a better way to refer to it would be that you'd call them monarchic, but not because they're trying to be a monarch over other people, though that could certainly be the case, but because psychologically you could think of them as being structured more as a monarchy in the sense that you have one person at the top, and that's sort of the purpose or goal, and everything needs to be organized underneath that one that one person, that one
Mhm.
goal. And so it's very directive. The way I split up the temperaments is in terms of the quote function axes, of which I distinguish the contextual and the universal. And the monarchic type has is sort of the wholly contextual, as it were, because it has both of its function axes are contextual. So for those who haven't read the book, obviously that's probably a bit of jargon, uh, but I can try to elaborate more if you'd like.
No, I think it's I guess I'm just trying to get, and there's no like I want this certain answer. It's just when I saw that, I saw Monarch and I said, well, that's definitely going to be an NTJ type. It does have like an attitudinal. I mean, you had to have included like their attitude towards, because you kind of write like, and you quote Nietzsche in a separate part of the book, but he's still part of that temperament where you're like, certain things are okay for those people because they're subpar. And I was like,
Yes.
that is hilarious. But like, that's the attitude of one part of the quadra. But I don't think ISFPs or ESFPs really think that about others. But NTJs certainly have that.
Yeah, well, it's yes, they certainly have that, and just as a little another anecdote, I have a friend who is an INTJ who. And another friend who is an ENFP, and the ENFP friend was sort of outraged by something that the INTJ said, where it was something along the lines of the ENFP was trying to figure out why this INTJ didn't go to parties, and he's like, "Well, because I don't really enjoy that kind of stuff." But the way he said it was that it was as though it was bad that you should enjoy that stuff, and she was trying to clarify, and was like, "So what?" And he's like, well, because that's for those kinds of people. That's for
Right.
they enjoy it. It's fine. I don't condemn them. If they want to be subpar, that's fine with me. It's
Yes.
not my business. It was this weird kind of like weird to me, but it wasn't. It was just natural. It wasn't meant to be condemnatory.
Yeah.
It was sort of like this natural aristocratic attitude, which some people have more than others. Another word I could have used was aristocrat.
That's kind of real. That I think when you do write your second book, which will be something I'm sure that you might be writing, I assume, you will do a sophomore release, but maybe that would be a rephrasing of it, because the aristocratic mindset might be more the monarch, because aristocrat is just like high society, like we're better,
Right.
but we're not the monarch. And
Right.
do you think it's also maybe the monarch because I don't report to anyone?
Yes. Though even their aristocrat would probably work better. I can't remember why. I think I used monarch because I wanted to directly contrast it with the democratic.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I wanted to make it one versus one sort of person, one perspective that is my perspective. But even then, as I've thought more about it, I do think aristocrat might work a bit better. I think at the time when I wrote it, aristocrat had too negative a connotation than I wanted. Though that's kind of funny because I have NFP friends who were delighted I referred to them as the anarchists, and others who were confused. But anyway, yeah. I'm off topic. But what was the original question?
The original question was just it was just a statement about I don't report to anyone because I'm the monarch. So I know I'm pretty sure my dad's an ESFP, and he's very much this way. Originally I thought ESTP, but definitely ESFP, and he's very much like, I report to myself. No one will tell me what to do, even if I'm in a federal government and the agent's telling me what to do. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it myself. So it's like that is there, but I don't see any relation between the SFPs and the NTJs.
So yeah, and this is good because I wanted to double back to NTJs, SFPs. Really?
Yeah,
you're putting them together. But because they certainly are not, they're not known for having particularly ESFPs, who I think would probably most strenuously deny it and be in part right. that, no, I don't have an aristocratic attitude. How dare you? I love everybody, and I love democracy and free. I shouldn't relate it directly to actual political democracy, but because that would confuse things. But but it is that again, I strictly speaking, I was using it to refer to the underlying structure of how the psyche works, where you have this. So even if they are very strenuously denying that they have these aristocratic tendencies, they will do it in an aristocratic way. So it will be, you still, even with the ESFP, you still have this sense that they are this one individual, and they emphasize that. And there's this sort of otherness to other people, and they're doing their own thing, and I'm doing my thing. And maybe we can have mutually beneficent exchanges with each other. And sometimes that can even be so close that it's like love. And then you get much more into the FI, where the exchange element breaks down. But you still, I'm trying to find the right way to describe it. It's like I can taste it, but it's hard to put into words. But I do still see that with the SFPs. For example, with the ISFP, I think the more strictly aristocratic element comes in because the NTJs are often much more actively trying to accomplish stuff, which requires other people be involved. So they have to become more organizers. And so then you get more of the sense of hierarchy of, I am trying to get you to do such thing. What must I offer you? Because I want the thing. And whereas with the SFPs, they seem to be more, I think because the FI is a little higher, and that confuses it a bit. But even with ISFPs, in my experience with them, they will still, sometimes they'll almost seem kind of like INTJs, where they'll get an idea and they're like, I really want to do this thing. I really want to do this thing. I must do this thing. I will. And it's like their TE is not as conscious, and so it doesn't show up as obviously, but they will they will go through thick and thin and plow through. Oh, was that my computer?
Nope, you're good.
Oh, okay. They'll sort of plow through if they need to. And I've seen that aspect, which will really messes with my FE, because I'm like, no, you're stepping on all of these people and you don't seem to realize it. You don't want to be mean, but I don't know if that makes sense.
I think you made a good point. Like when you were talking about that, like the ESFP existing, but like still not within the orb of other people, like they're out doing their own thing. This whole like doing your own thing, resonates with me. And I still feel like there is a utilization of other people to accomplish a goal.
Yes.
Where there is a, I guess I just, from my experience, more manipulation of social environment to get things done. They're much more gregarious. Like, you know, Nietzsche would call them the gregarious animal. They're just like, just people that are just like, they're always surrounded around people, and they accomplish their goals through like extreme gregariousness and bravado and people coming around them.
And well, I mean, everybody, I don't want to say NTJs don't love people if they so choose, but there's the sense where it's like they really love people in this sort of almost ESFJ-ish sort of way. But there's much more of this sense of inherent freedom. Whereas the ESFJ is much more like wanting to create an environment where everybody feels they are in harmony and everybody knows what all the rules are, but the rules are broad and constructed enough that, everybody can be included. But when an ESFJ goes up to a true-blooded ESFP and is like, the ESFP can get sort of frustrated because they feel like the ESFJ is trying to send their like tentacles or shoots to bind them down into this, with all these little kind of rules and things. And the ESFP is like, no, I want to be free and let other people handle themselves.
I always like to do I would ask questions like, I think I asked you on that first interview, like if you took, 4 types on a trip. But I'm thinking like if you put all the quadras against each other and you said like, who would build the best business, and you had all 4 types like competing like that would be an interesting question, because you'd have so much dynamism together.
Right.
Who, if you had like a bracket like versus each other.
Right.
Because obviously I think the monarchs would build the best business, but then I look at another type and they would build a really terrible house.
Well, you can probably, and people viewing can probably tell there's this little bit of me that always gets slightly uncomfortable with those questions, because I'm like, oh, is anyone gonna? Oh no, I'm saying it as a joke. I don't mind it. Because of course I'm still going to try to answer your question. Of course, yeah. I'm going to jump into that water. I'm not afraid. But I think it's very interesting that I would get any kind of discomfort. Discomfort isn't even right the word. It's more of just I'm instantly like, well, first of all, the first thought is anybody going to get irritated if I say so and so is better than so and so? Like, are any of the types going to try to murder me? I'm trying to keep the peace. But aside from just that, there's also the other side of me is like, well, there's so many factors, and I'm always trying to equalize it out. Whereas, and that's like a natural instinct, but you're not the only person to ask questions along these lines. And so I think it actually is NFPs and STJs will do it too, actually, where they want, to some extent, it's much more prevalent with the NTJs, where it's like they're interested, they want to see, okay, what's the ranking here? Like, not in the way of like, yes, I want to oppress anybody, but I just want to know who's most efficient at what, because that's just how you see the world. It's like, what is the best way to do it given such circumstances? It's just how, and I'm just like, oh, but I don't want to attach value to these human souls. And it's like, I don't care. I just want,
it's just a thought experiment. It's just a thought experiment.
Just a thought experiment. Yeah. There's kind of that, which goes, I think, back into why I would use aristocratic to decide it, or to refer to it, because you have that natural tendency, very important tendency, to rank things in terms of value given certain parameters, and that's what kind of contextual has to do with you're able to value and rank things given a particular point of view that you have taken on. Anyway,
right? No, and this is so. I think I've already thought about my next book, and I'm sure you, as soon as you finish Motes and Beams, you're like, here's what my next book's really going to be. But I want to do sort of either a speech or a book called The Hierarchy of Type. And I really think it would be somewhat like clickbait, but also based on Western ideals, like even post-Renaissance or post-revolution, French Revolution and democracy and things like that. It would be like, can I make an argument for a hierarchy of type? And it would not be like, this is the NTJ and then SFPs on the bottom, but it would be like, maybe given the context, like business, this tends to be objectively, I mean, we know ENTJs make the most money. Truity did a study. We know that as a fact. And they said they make like average $85K a year, which is of all the ENTJs that they typed through Truity, is hundreds of thousands of people. Mm-hmm. And then, ISFPs make the lowest.
At the very least, if you're making that much money, you're going to type as an ENTJ on their test.
Maybe you would.
Because it like that at the very least, like that is what that study would mean, which is still very significant.
It is, and people,
because it means you have to think like an ENTJ. Oh, were they?
Just I reposted and I talked a lot about it, and then like some people from some of more of the academics in the community that have written a lot of books, they were like, well, this isn't quite right. And I'm I'm not trying to say that they can't. I'm just trying to say that on average, this type makes more. ESTJs tend to be at the highest corporate level too. So I can't do anything about that. Right.
Well, it's actually, I had not heard of that.
Okay, I'll send it to you. You might the video might be coming out.
I would be very curious, because that it doesn't surprise me. And it's actually, that's very interesting.
So like in the book, I would do like, okay, business hierarchy tends to be this, arts tend to be this, philosophy tends to be this, and then say like, it's okay that there are, back to my whole pitch about there are differences, and you write some great arguments in your book about like, you can't say that all ENFPs are this way, but you can't say that ENFPs don't exist.
Yes.
So
exactly. Yeah. You find these categories, and it's mushy because everybody's different. I'll try not to go off on a huge tangent here, but it's kind of like quantum mechanics. The way I view quantum mechanics, where like if you have billions and billions of photons, and on the aggregate, when they hit the photosensitive screen, some of them aren't in the area, but there is a very definite pattern they create on the aggregate. It's like that. So you know.
Great example, and those are the types of examples that win arguments. Honestly, like, okay, well, don't look at the validity and reliability scores. Don't go there. Just think about it like this, and you're like, well, that makes sense.
Right.
I just ask people to describe themselves, and they say, well, give me like 3 bullet points. And they say, oh, I'm like, I'm a logical thinker. I tend to be a wallflower, and I don't really like going to parties. Okay, well, there are other people that might say the same thing, and we would call that thing,
you would call it that type. And that's why it can be useful to have the notion of like, quote, phenotypes, as it were, where like someone, for whatever reason, it's a genetic term. They are, phenotype means that they are manifesting a certain way, but the genes are actually a different way. So there's like, so
gene expression. And that sort of thing?
I don't know if anybody uses phenotype anymore. That's literally from like middle school science, and I've just never forgotten it. But for somebody to be presenting very strongly as, say, an INTP, but when you really dig in, you realize you're really more this way, but your upbringing or you like certain things about this, and so you have taken on this persona that tends to be associated. There was something else I was going to say earlier, but I like. Was
it about the hierarchy? Was it about business, art?
Oh yes, that would be very interesting, because what you'd be doing is you would be analyzing, okay, what are sort of dominant structures that tend to call, like, what is the game? Yeah, the way it exists now that allows you to succeed in business versus art versus philosophy, because you can definitely it's undeniable, say, in philosophy, that you're going to find certain types more than others. Yeah, you just will, because there are, if the types mean anything, they're going to mean probably that you're going to get certain people will take the path of least resistance, as it were. And this is the thing I wanted to bring up briefly is with quantum mechanics, it's very interesting looking at the history of its development, because in my opinion, you have a lot of NTP types, because they really like the math and the theoretical physics and stuff. Maybe a scattering of NTJs, though I'm not quite sure where they are, but it's very clear where the NTPs are. And then you have one lone INFJ. His name is Niels Bohr. Okay. And he's just wandering around being his Niels Bohr self. And he had the luck to he had the luck to solve this one problem basically by just breaking the rules, and then it solved everything. And it was more just because in my view, was because he just thought a slightly different way, but somehow he ended up in this NTP dominated field. And so he would ask these questions naturally that the others wouldn't necessarily think to ask, and it was very, very helpful. But it's not like you need a quota of INFJs in the field or something. He just happened. It's just endlessly fascinating to me and sort of amusing, just all these little stories that accumulate of this INFJ kind of just wandering around, and all these NTPs trying to figure him out. And like, I read about this Bohr guy, and I assumed he was going to be like me, but instead he's like this crazy sort of mystical philosopher person or whatever. So anyway,
you're close to that. You're kind of close to that.
I love Niels Bohr. I love Niels Bohr a whole lot.
Well,
Mystical. Oh my goodness.
it could be. Well, yeah, like a shaman for sure.
Yeah.
So let me end the interview on this question.
Sure.
And I'm starting to ask a lot of people this now. Instead of asking people how they're doing, which is very generic, I'm asking people what they're building. So, Michael, why don't you? I don't know. We have not talked before this. So, what are you building right now? What's going on? What projects are you?
That's a really good question, because I do have an answer. So a couple of things. One, as I've mentioned before, I think I've mentioned this on the channel, I've been accepted to a grad program in philosophy. I've received full funding, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I was very, very grateful for that. So it's looking like I'll be able to get through debt-free, and which is very good, particularly when you're going through for philosophy.
Yeah.
My goal is to be a professor, so I'd like to teach and write more books and papers and things, because I've always been drawn most to the philosophical side of these problems.
Oh yeah.
But the other thing I've been working on a few more video ideas, one on quantum mechanics. I'm planning on doing a whole little series related to the song thing. So in a month, I was going to start releasing some videos that are about me just describing why I personally associate this song with this type, and sort of use that as a jump board to talk more about the types. And I have been working on another book. It'll probably take a while. It is the book I have a couple of books in that I've begun, and I'll see which one sort of survival of the fittest makes it through the years. But it is not directly typologically related. It's much more philosophical, but that has sort of taken a bunch of my attention at the moment. Oh, one more thing worth noting, however, is that I recently did an interview with Jack Aaron of World Socionic Society, if you're familiar with that. And he has been playing around with some interesting new concepts that I believe he was inspired by me to do that.
Wow.
It's kind of hard to explain. I'm still sort of mulling it around in my head, but it's very interesting. He's working on the usefulness of coming up with a few more dichotomies, not to expand how many types there are, but to analyze the types further. So it's interesting.
Okay.
So I've been mulling that over. So
yeah, and one day, so that's great. I would, obviously we'll need a signed copy of when this book comes out. But one thing is, and I'll say this is what you I was like, oh no, not another model, please God. Like I don't need another model coming out, because I can't do it.
There's just yeah.
So when there are some people within the larger type, not even MBTI, but just larger community, it's a new assessment, a new way of seeing the same thing. And you probably see the same thing where it's like, but this is just type rebranded, or you've just taken it and made it you've created a new archetype, which is essentially an ESTJ, but now you call them the driver. And I'm like, but so do you think we're done with the models, or do you think we will continually expand a new way to see it type?
That's a good question. Well, realistically, I don't think we're done with people coming up with people coming up with models.
Right.
And Jack Aaron has made me think, maybe there's a couple of things that I missed. I do think there are things I could certainly elaborate more upon from the system I laid out in Motes and Beams. I mean, you can just fill it up with more and more content.
Sure.
I certainly when I finished Motes and Beams, I was like, okay, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of theory building, I feel satisfied. Yeah. I'm like, I have done it. I have my tract that I have put out there.
Yes.
No other tract need be written, but of course, as I say in there, I do on principle encourage people to continue thinking, even if that means creating more systems, just because to some extent I think that's how some people think and learn. Though I'm thinking of it more in just terms of people. I suppose I have different feelings when it comes to people kind of trying to peddle them for money or in order to, I haven't really addressed sort of the commercial aspect of some of this stuff on my channel. I just,
It doesn't seem like your brand. It's off brand for you.
Yeah.
From my point of view, I'd be like, I don't
There's
need,
been
you don't
so
need to
many
wade into
videos I've
that.
made that I feel like are I've worried were off brand. There's a lot of weird videos I've made that no one has mentioned, but
you're a philosopher, so when you dig into like,
sure,
I don't know, Marx versus Spinoza, I'm like,
oh yes,
like I don't think you've done that, but I know that you've talked about Marx a lot. So I'm like, go do your thing. Like someone's gonna like it. That's not for me now, but
sure,
all the other type videos are. So let me just say to the audience, this is the book, the only one you need. Motes and Beams by Michael Pierce, a Neo-Jungian Theory of Personality. And after you finish this, then you buy this my book. And so Michael, thanks for taking the time today to be again on my channel.
Absolutely.
Everyone needs to subscribe to his channel, buy his book. Do you care if people buy Kindle or paperback? Does it all the same? Just get the word out.
I'm more just concerned with I have made a more of a profit than I expected to. I wasn't doing it for money.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, either one. I think I actually end up getting more money technically through the ebook because I don't have to go through Amazon. So if you're trying to give me money, well, I mean, if you're trying to give me money, you could just go to Patreon and sign up for a month for like $20 and then quit after a month. It's a little roundabout, but or buy like 15 copies of my ebook because then you're just sending me stuff through PayPal over and over again.
When you teach, so here's the racket that exists in academia is you just assign your own book in class.
Oh yeah, I will never do that.
But we know that people will be like, yeah, I wrote this book. It's $345. It's I teach like that's a thing. So if you're ever trying to make some money off the system.
Oh, someone would have to gouge my eyes out like Oedipus if I ever did that. Oh my gosh. I must never.
Thank you so much for being here. Audience appreciates, I appreciate it. And maybe we should just do the next video on like the theocratic or the other types.
Oh, sure.
It doesn't have to just be the monarchs. I mean,
sure.
Do that. So maybe we got a series going.
Yeah, I'll try to check the comments on this video if any of you have additional questions. I mean, for me or for Joe.
Yep.
I'll do my best to answer. So
awesome. Thank you, sir. Be good.
Thank you.
I tried to live without you. Just can't go.